Board of FEMA now opening a convention center in Dallas to hold thousands of unaccompanied migrant teens. The head of DHS in the hot seat, grilled by lawmakers about the sudden increase of migrants trying to cross into the U.S. The IRS tonight moving the tax deadline from April to May now. Why the shift? And President Biden now acknowledging he wants to raise taxes on Americans making more than $400,000. What he told our George Stephanopoulos. The president also weighing in on New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, saying he should resign if the allegations are proven true. Biden adding, I think he probably end up being prosecuted too. Late today, Governor Cuomo responded to what the president said. Major news tonight in the trial of former police officer Derek Chauvin, why two of the jurors have now been removed. And news on Tiger Woods tonight, now home, his condition and his is World News Tonight with Dave Field. It's great to have you with us here on Wednesday night. We have two major stories developing as we come on the air tonight, but authorities are calling a potentially dangerous tornado event across multiple states. Reports of tornadoes on the ground already. Ginger tracking the line of storms set to hit after dark, and she's standing by for us. We begin tonight with that deadly shooting rampage in Georgia. 3 different spas in the Atlanta area, 8 people killed.
The surge involving thousands of unaccompanied children.
Congresswoman, the border is secure and the border is not open.
It's now very hard to find many European cities. And still, the EU is adamant we should get all of the British-made doses as orders has now raised the heat.
Well, this country since World War II. The Obama healthcare plan in 2009 expanded healthcare more than any program that was started since Medicare. Both were decided by one vote, and both from the same state.
More gunshots, 30 miles south in Atlanta. The Gold Spa advertises 24/7 massages, and police say operates legally. 3 more Asian women were murdered.
Day in and day out, working 12 to 14-hour days, 7 days a week, and each one has a unique story about what brought them here. 2 weeks ago to date, the Gateway Mall vaccination site in Brentwood opened its doors to the people of Jacksonville. While many of the men and women of the U.S. Navy say it's an honor to serve here, for one woman, the job is personal.
I came in and just the dawn, so everybody heard the sunshine.
Around 5 p.m. Tuesday, long
Is this really necessary?
It is. Don't want you to have a stroke or a massive heart attack while you're detoxing.
Terrific. Sobriety's gonna kill me. How's your blood pressure?
Great.
Okay, Bonnie, pick what movie you want to watch. I brought Steel Magnolias, fried mixed tomatoes, and Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants. Wait, why does the drug addict get to pick?
Because when one of us stumbles, we surround them with bugs.
Oh,
Why don't you make yourself useful and take care of some of your mom's chores?
maybe I don't want to be useful.
It's okay, she doesn't have to.
Damn right I don't have to.
The to-do list is on the fridge.
I know where it is.
Let's watch Steel Magnolias. I've never seen that before.
Julia Roberts dies. Thanks for coming with me. Sure. Fun doing chores. Feels like I'm working on a ranch. Okay, first thing we have to do is clear up the lid traps. Great. What's that? In the dryer, see? Ew. It looks like the dryer's belly button. Take care of it. Relax. This is ridiculous. I have to do her work while she gets cold. Were you this angry with me when I relaxed? Of course not. Well, what's the difference? You haven't been disappointing me since I was born. Yeah, well, at least you still have a mother. Mine died when I was 16. Oh, She battled depression her whole life, and then one day she just gave up. Drove her little red Ferrari into the garage, closed the door, and carbon monoxide did the rest. Oh, God. Yeah. It was really hard to drive that car after that. But you know, it was a Ferrari, so I muscled through. Oh no, what's wrong? Oh, Brad, true. Damn it, it's still alive. What are we gonna do? I don't know. I hate to see the poor thing suffer. Stand back. What? Just move aside. Holy crap! You carry a gun? No, this isn't really a gun. This is a gun.
I don't get this movie.
What's not to get? They're strong like steel, but soft like magnolia.
Okay, now I get it. I just hate it. How you doing? Oh, tonight this is my bottom. It's up to you. Your bottom's when you decide to stop digging. Or when I beat you to death with my shovel. Boy, I really did it this time, didn't I? Yep. Christy hates me. Give her time. How much time? I don't know. Maybe a year or two if you don't do anything else stupid. You're such a comfort. Let's just get you through this part right now. We'll deal with you and Christy later. Thank you for being so kind to me. Crazy old ladies were kind to me when I was. Does it still feel like I deserve it? Funny. If people like us got what we deserve, we'd all be dead. Again, such a comfort. For God's sake, they're just having dinner. Hey. How'd it go?
Fine. Where's my mother?
She's upstairs.
How's she doing?
Pretty bad.
Oh, good. I want to see. Just a heads up. Don't piss off Jill. Hi.
Hey.
Pretty rough, huh?
Awful.
Sweet. Need anything?
Really?
Sure.
I haven't washed my hair for days.
Come on into the bathroom.
Thanks.
See my funny note in the pill bottle?
Yeah. What did you funny response?
Hello?
Hi, David.
Hey, how are you?
Good, I'm good.
What's new, Bob?
Not much, not much. I've still got corned beef left over from Sunday. Lots of corned beef left.
Well, my goal is to eat most, not all of it. I got a lot, but to eat the bulk of the main dish on Sunday.
Right.
This Sunday is my goal to eat the main dish, soup and matzo ball and cannella, and I think there's some little pasta in there and the flanken. That's my goal.
That sounds good.
And the tongue and the coleslaw and the bread and all will be eaten somewhere in the weekend also, but not at the same meal. That's a lot of food.
How much was your bill, if I may ask?
$53.
That's not bad.
No, I only got a quarter of a pound of tongue.
Okay.
It's expensive, and I used to make it when I was and I've even made it in Jacksonville, and it wasn't kosher, but I made beef tongue. You could find it all over, and it wasn't that expensive.
Wow.
But here, that's ridiculous. The price that they want for tongue. They want $1 extra everywhere you look for tongue.
You can't get it in Publix. You can't get it in Publix, I don't think.
Not anymore, but you used to.
Where could you buy where do you buy locally?
Well, you used to buy beef tongue all over the place. I haven't looked for it in Publix, but I'm sure the price went up for some reason. It tripled.
Wow.
Because, and I don't know why. And I got, on the tongue, I got the lean portion.
Right.
Because if you don't get the lean, it's very fatty.
Right, I remember that, yeah. Even the corned beef, I got lean corned beef too. I don't like fatty. I don't like fat.
Well, I buy the lean corned beef only that's the way it comes. I buy it in the kosher corned beef in the packages at Publix.
Right.
And that's okay with me. I eat that. Well, I'll eat non-kosher, that stuff too. But I do buy the kosher. It's a little more expensive, but it's very lean.
Like
that and the pastrami also, very lean.
Yeah, I didn't know. I don't like pastrami. It gets too fatty.
Yeah, well, this is lean. If there's any fat on it, it's just a little bit, and you can always snip off a little fat.
Yeah, you can cut the fat off, right?
Yeah, there's not too much of it there.
Right. Good.
So, is anybody else with us?
Rabbi Address is just coming on right now. He's not on yet, but his picture showed up.
Okay, who's coordinating this thing?
Ellen.
Ellen?
Yep.
That's what I figured.
Yep. Hi, Ellen.
Hey, Bob. Hey, Dave.
Hi, Ellen.
Hi.
The sandwich was great. The corned beef sandwich was excellent, as I was telling David.
Yeah, the corned beef was super. I liked that.
And the potato salad was excellent. Wow.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to doing it again.
Yeah, I'm thinking we might do it early May.
Okay. Did we make a little bit of money on it, I guess, I hope?
Yeah.
Good.
I don't have all totals, but we did a lot better than we thought we were going to do.
80 people is good response.
99.
99, it's even better.
Yeah.
I saw my picture on Facebook. That looked good.
Oh, good. Well, you look great.
I should have taken my mask off.
No. You're safe.
Where were you taking pictures?
I didn't know you were there. I just grabbed a few of the people that came in to pick up their grocery, their bag.
Oh, I was there. I was probably the second one there.
I missed you. Yeah.
It was the first.
My friend from another synagogue was left before 1 o'clock, but they were so organized.
We're good.
It was unbelievable. There were 2 people in cars behind me. I know that, but they were very hospitable, as I already told you, Ellen.
I know they're wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did they have trouble with the truck? It looked like the truck was on a 4-wheeler or something. We drove back.
The truck broke down. It had to get picked up.
What a shame. Wow.
The starter had to get repaired.
I got you.
My things were wrapped so beautifully, and it was wonderful.
Yep.
Yes. What'd you order, Felice?
I got a couple of knishes and a very delicious lean brisket sandwich, which I stretched out over a few days. It was so good. And those deli pickles, oh my goodness.
I love the half sour pickles. Those are great.
Yes.
Yes. Well, at the restaurant, they put the pickles and everything on the table.
Right.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. Thank you. Bob, for getting me in.
How are
You're
the,
very welcome, please. Very welcome.
how are the Knishes?
Hi,
It
Cheryl.
was out of this world delicious. I thought I was in heaven. I'm not kidding.
We like
But you
we like kosher deli here. but
Pasta.
It was so good. It was just so good. And it reminded me of my childhood because we used to get that stuff at Rockaway and places like that.
Right.
So
Oh,
it was very emotional.
I think it's better than 2J's.
Yes, I think so too.
Much better.
This is fun talking about deli.
I know.
I'm so glad we did that and we're going to do it again. I'm so
Right.
glad.
Got a lot of delis in Boca, I can tell you that.
Yeah.
I think Ben's is probably the outstanding one. Do you agree?
I think
I don't know the other delis. I'm a
Ellen, it
Carnegie
was-
Deli fan.
Carnegie in New York?
Yeah, it's not there
Oh,
anymore, but
I
we go there
know.
all the time.
Really?
Henny Youngman was always there, and my parents were silly. I go like, Mom, go say hi to Henny, and she went. So I go over to him. He's over 6 feet tall. He was like 6'3", 6'4",
well,
and he was really, really nice. And he'd come over and say hi and talk to you.
That's
And,
so nice.
It was, yeah. I mean, I'm used to that food. You know, Second Avenue Deli is great.
Yeah.
Stage is all right, but Carnegie
it
was
says,
fun.
I don't get any respect. Is that the same one?
No, that's Henny Youngman. Take my wife, please.
Right. God, which one's which?
Oh, who's the guy? He died of a brain tumor. He was gruff with big bulging eyes. That comedian. He was in the movie Caddyshack.
Wow.
Caddyshack.
I can't remember his name.
Who's that guy?
Hey, Bob,
well, they
Go
used
to the phone. The phone answers everything.
you know, Bob, I don't know what we'd do without you. Will you keep us on track with all of our numbers and it's like, and remind us, say, gee, let me think now. Is there something going on Wednesday night? Let me
My
think
pleasure.
about
My
this.
pleasure. My pleasure.
Thank you. Oh goodness, I was sitting outside. Puppies were out there playing around and trying to chase other dogs, which on leashes, so they don't really have much of a run. So I thought, oh, goodness sakes, I need to charge my phone, and here it was ringing, and there you were. I said, oh my gosh, I've got to take this call.
Bob, it's Rodney Dangerfield.
Oh, that's it. Rodney Danger.
My goodness.
That's I remember him.
Well,
Yeah, he
I didn't
died.
know all those delis, those fancy ones. There were delis near me where I lived. I didn't have to go, you know. There was a deli right where I lived.
Where was that, David?
Well, I lived in Upper Manhattan in Inwood.
Very
I
up.
just saw that Miranda did a musical on Washington Heights. And I went to high school for a semester in Washington Heights.
Wow.
But that's where the Orthodox have their big main congregation there. I remember the kid walking up there. I used to go to high school not too far from there, up on Washington Heights. But now it looked like a dump. It was not the prettiest place to be when I was there. I can't imagine what it all looks like now.
It said New York is bouncing back now. It said New York is bouncing back.
Well, it's got a lot of ways to bounce back in that area.
But it's better than it's been in the middle of the pandemic. They said it's really bouncing back, I heard. So.
That's good to hear. I hope so.
Police, are you from Rockaways? Did you live in the
No,
Rockaways?
but I used to go to the Rockaways a lot. I lived in Valley Stream, then I lived in Flushing, Queens, then I lived in Port Washington.
Yeah.
Not too far from where Rabbi Goodman was, surprisingly, but we never knew each other, of course.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm a New York girl at heart, and we used to go to Far Rockaway, and that's where I got my knishes. And that's why I feel so emotional, because it just brings me back to my parents and grandparents of blessed memory. It was wonderful.
I used to get my knishes, the best ones, was in Coney Island.
Yeah, they were good too.
Right
I
next door to what's the name of that famous place in Coney Island?
Nathan's Hot Dogs?
Nathan's, right next door to
Yeah.
Pat, Mrs.
Hot
Stahl.
dog. Good hot dog.
Now you have to go to Lower East Side to Yona Schimmel's.
Wow.
Oh,
Ellen, where did you grow up, Ellen?
In a lot of places, but I lived in Manhattan.
Okay.
And
Wow.
the Chinese, the Jewish couples would come out after Shabbos and eat Chinese on the Lower East Side. It was funny.
What history? What sweetness? Hey, Gina.
Hi, Felicia.
well,
What
Mother's-
sweetness.
my parents on the Lower East Side.
What's that, buddy?
Well, when I knew them, they were divorced.
Yeah. But you can't afford to live there right now.
Really, I bet. Hi, Marcia and Dan.
Hi, Marcia.
Hi.
Hi. Dan, how you feeling now? You feeling a lot better?
Yeah,
Good.
Good.
I'm good.
I need to call you, Bob, for a recommendation for a jeweler.
I got lots of records. I know every jeweler in town.
I know, we need to talk though. We'll
Okay.
talk offline.
Not a problem, we'll talk. Yep.
Ooh, that sounds ominous.
I know.
No, that sounds polite. So many people have their private conversations over everybody else. That's
I
not good.
know. or chatted with the other.
Hey, buddy. Over you.
We're just having a general conversation about delis.
Yes, we are, and it's so delicious to even think about. And Ellen, that was a
Look at all the
great
delis in
idea.
Miami. Look at all the delis on the beach. They're not around Pumpernicks and Wolfies and Juniors.
Rascal House.
Rascal House.
Yes,
Oh, yes.
sweet
Pumpernicks.
memories.
Corky's.
Corky's. Yeah, Corky's.
53rd Street.
That was a hangout.
Yep, I used to, yeah, Corky's.
Was that in Miami?
Yeah. Well, Pumpernicks was our main hangout, and that was near where we lived on Miami
On
Beach.
Hollandale Beach Boulevard.
Right, Hollandale Boulevard.
Wolfies too, remember Wolfies?
Mhm.
I
They're all
told you we're
closed.
talking deli.
They're all closed.
They're with the Wolfies here, Bob. I didn't grow up on delis.
No.
And I grew up in West Virginia in the country.
My favorite was all the sours for lunch and all the pastries for breakfast on the table. You just ate and ate, and then you ordered something and thinking, I'm never gonna be able to eat all this food.
And then the pickles and the tomato, all that stuff on the table?
Goldie,
Have
you're
sours.
muted.
Yeah, sours.
You know, when I first came to this area, in Orlando, there was a similar deli to Wolfie.
Amira's.
And when they redid that mall that they were near or around or in, that restaurant disappeared.
Yeah. Amira's is the one that we used to go to in Orlando. It was connected to the kosher butcher.
Wow.
Remember Warman's? Warman's was here, remember
I
Warman's?
do remember.
Oh,
Mormons.
everybody remembers Warren's.
But they were
Yes.
kosher style, they were not kosher.
With,
No, I got-
with love, I remember Warmans.
I've got a story about Warmans and my father, Allah may rest in peace. My dad was in the hospital. He's in Baptist downtown, and he was on a heart machine, right? And he called, what's her name for Mormons? The wife.
Pearl.
He called Pearl, and he said, I'll pay you. He says, I want you to send me by cab a corned beef sandwich and whatever. And she's like, sure, Nate, I'll send it to you. I'll send it up to the hospital. And she did. It arrived. My mother was like, what are you doing? What is this? He's like, if I'm gonna die, I want a corned beef sandwich first. And he died shortly after that, but he had his corned beef sandwich via taxi cab from Pearl.
What a good story.
Yeah.
Good story.
I have a story about Warmans too. I had just moved here weeks prior, and it was raining, and it was Veterans Day. And my husband was working, and my two little girls, we didn't know anybody. We were kind of lonely, and we went downtown, and then we were coming back, and we drove there, and I went, Warman's Deli, oh my goodness. And we went in there, and when we walked in, Saul of blessed memory had his hands, both hands, he was bent over the pickle barrel and he was doing whatever restaurateurs do with their pickle barrel. And he saw the two little girls and his smile lighted up and he had two pickles in his hand and extended those pickles to my daughters. And I never forgot that feeling.
Oh,
Yeah.
so sweet.
Rabbi Address.
Hi,
How are
Rabbi
you?
Idris.
Are you enjoying the pickle stories?
The pickle
Hi,
man.
Ruthie.
Let me explain
Hi,
something to you.
Sandra.
We could spend an entire evening,
Talking about pickles.
okay? Because no, about you ever see that movie Crossing Delancey?
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
Great movie.
the pickle man.
We could spend an entire evening talking about deli stories because I have a million of them. And this, and it flows right into tonight's topic of health and wellness since
The worst thing for health.
Very
Worst thing for
healthy.
your heart.
as I grew up, I was led to believe that a lot of the stuff that I feasted on as a child was horrible.
It is.
The problem, of course, was it was totally delicious.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
And every once in a while, I will admit to you that you have to feed that beast because
Yes.
it's a soul food. It's Jewish soul
Yes.
food.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Very
It's
much.
very good. And look, I remember when I was in New York, working in New York one night when I would stay over, and then we're going to stop because I literally would be here all night. And one night had worked late. I was walking to my hotel, and it was a night like this up here because I'm back home. It was gray and it was drizzling, and I didn't want a big dinner. I just wanted to get to the hotel and go to sleep. So I'm walking down 7th Avenue, and I said, "Oh, I'm going to just go to the Carnegie Deli. Screw it. I don't care." So walk into the Carnegie Deli, and you what do you want? Sit down over there. Very pleasant. How are you? Have a nice day. I sit down and say, okay, let me have a turkey sandwich, lettuce and tomato, and a Dr. Brown's Diet Black Cherry, because it doesn't get any better than that. And I didn't want the corned beef. Next to me sits down two tourists, probably from someplace like in Iowa, and they were told you got to go to the Carnegie. So they order. The waiter comes over and says, "Oh, what do you want?" What do you want? Like they knew what the hell they wanted. Well, we don't know what this is. Well, I'll make a corned beef sandwich. I said, "Yeah, we were told that that's really good." So about 3 seconds later, because it only takes 2 seconds, he brings the two sandwiches to these ladies. They were that big.
Yeah.
So I'm reading my newspaper. I'm chowing down my sandwich. I look over to the table next to me. These people had no idea what to do with these two sandwiches. And they says, "How do we eat this?"
I love a bread.
And I said, "You got, but they could not eat it. They nibbled at it. They took a knife and a fork and they started cutting it. Oh God. You're obvious, and I was going to say, obviously, you're not Jewish, so anyway, it's 7 o'clock. So,
7 o'clock, yes.
but we'll, one day we should I have a great Rascal House story.
Oh, right. Wow.
No, I was there. I was many years ago. I was there with my one of my colleagues, friends of mine, and he picked up a funeral. He picked it from the waitress. He said we were two rabbis, and she said, "Oh, I need to have someone to do a funeral." So not only did he got a good sandwich, he an omelet. It was one of those things. It was breakfast or brunch. He picked up a funeral, made some money out of it. Okay, we're all here. I hope, and who's ever here is here. Ellen, are we ready to go?
Yep, we're all set.
Rock and roll.
Everyone's muted.
Oh, okay.
And more will be coming.
Okay, so here's what we're going to do tonight. And this is the third in the series of these family issue things that deal with us. And we talked a little bit about end of life. We talked about caregiving. And tonight we're going to do something that is an issue that has really emerged in my work in the last couple of years is something that our generation really wants to talk about. And that is the whole health and wellness issue, and not only physical health, but which is especially relevant in the pandemic, mental health. So I'm going to try and run through this as quickly as possible because this usually takes about 2 hours. So I will talk very, very fast. The one for next month is the last one, which is the most controversial. We saved the most controversial to the last, and that's the ritual one. But I'll give you a heads up on that before, and I think that's on April 17th. It's also, I don't have my calendar in front of me, but it's right around tax day, which is now extended to May, which is really good since we haven't even started yet. So what I want to do with you is walk you through how we as a Jewish tradition approach staying healthy. For our generation, this has become very, very important and exacerbated even more around the pandemic. But baby boomers and people of our age and older are very, very concerned about health and have been even before the pandemic, much more so than my children's generation, the Gen Xers. And certainly my grandchildren's generation, whose definition of exercise is using their thumb on a screen. So I want to walk you through a little bit about the textual foundation, and then show you some of the miraculous, oh, thank you, Rona, April 14th, Wednesday, rock and roll. Bless you. And show you some of the textual interpretations by some of the tradition that is centuries old, but very, very contemporary. And then I want to end by walking you through very briefly how we as a Jewish tradition have begun to approach issues of mental health, because there's an actual diagnosis of mental health within the Talmud. And this is all part of our Jewish tradition. For those of you who are interested in doing more of this, there's a significant number of articles and books. One of the recent podcasts we did was with this professor, Jeff Levin from Baylor University, who's just published from Oxford University Press a book called Religion and Medicine. It's a semi-scholarly book that really traces the juxtaposition and the linkage between Judaism, religion and medicine throughout history. It's a very, very fine book. He did a podcast for me. And if you want to listen to him and then decide if you want to buy the book, you go to our website, jewishsacredaging.com, and type in Jeff Levin, Levin, in the search bar, and the podcast will come up. Hi, Jill. Did you connect with Kotak, by the way? I gave you his phone number. Jill?
Yes, we're all set.
Good. So
Thank you.
We begin with a text, because everything we do in my work, and as you know from Torah study, is based upon text. So this is a text from Leviticus Rabbah. That's the great midrash based upon the book of Leviticus, which we begin this Shabbat. A story is told of Hillel that when he had finished a lesson with his pupils, he accompanied them part of the way out. They said to him, "Where are you going?" And he said, "I'm going to perform a religious duty." And they said, "What religious duty?" And he said, "I'm going to take a bath." And they questioned, his students said, "Wait a minute, is this a religious obligation?" To which Hillel responded, "If someone is appointed to scrape and clean the statues of the king that are set up in the theaters and circuses, and is paid to do that work, and furthermore associates that with nobility, how much the more so should I, who am created in God's image and likeness, take care of my body?" This is a classic midrash that opens the door to how we approach staying healthy. The bath in this midrash is a religious duty. Why? Because, and we're cutting through a lot of text, your body is a gift from God, because, as Hillel said, you were created how? B'Tselem Elohim. I'm laughing only because if you look on the screen, Cheryl Kovitz has become a dog, and the dog is very attentive. I want to tell you something. Yes, you, dog, whatever your name is, you pay more attention than half the people who come to services sometimes. So this goes in my book. Every colleague I know is going to have Zoom stories. I have a million of them after this year. So this midrash opens the door. So in other words, your body, you're created in the image of God. Your body is a gift. Because of that, you have a religious obligation to take care of your body, what you put into it, that you don't harm it, how you eat, how you clean it. That's a religious obligation. Okay. That's very, very important. Now there's texts that talk about this throughout Jewish tradition. There's blessings, there's prayers, some of which we've included. Every Shabbos morning, remember, for those of you who come to services, some of the services, we do the veins and arteries prayer, the bathroom prayer that gives thanks that our bodies are functioning the way they should function. Why? So that we are able to stand in life before God. In other words, we say a blessing that all the stuff that's supposed to open opens, and all the stuff that's supposed to close so that we're able to worship God. This is a theological foundation. Your theology may not agree with this, but that's okay. We're talking about traditional Jewish theology, which is everything based upon how you relate to God. Genesis 1 and Genesis 2. That's the foundation of the Torah. So this is an important understanding to begin this conversation. Okay, so the text completely, in variety of different levels throughout our tradition, and I'm telescoping this, speak to the idea of health and wellness. For example, Dr. Fauci, no doubt, read his Talmud. Now, Fauci's Italian, probably has never looked at a Talmud, but he didn't know that he was channeling the Talmud when a year ago he stood up, when he was allowed to, and said that you have to wash your hands. Washing your hands is based upon, in our tradition, a passage in Masechet Yoma. This is a passage within the Babylonian Talmud, Yoma. That's the word, that's the book, that's the part of the Talmud that deals with laws and regulations around Yom Kippur. Hence Yoma, which is, it's Talmudic Aramaic, and the aleph at the end is like a hey in Hebrew at the beginning. So Yoma is the laws and regulations in the Talmud that deals with Yom Kippur. And there is a passage in Yoma in page 77b, in case you want to check it out on Sefaria, that says, those who eat food with unwashed hands endanger their health because they are, and what are the English translations, filled with dangerous germs. Now, one of you will say, time out, hockey puck. That's from the 6th century. They didn't know germ theory. Bob?
Where does kosher come in? Does kosher come back then?
Oh, no, kosher laws are based upon, actually, you'll read all about them in the book of Leviticus. They're based in biblical texts, in Torah texts, and were amended, adapted, massaged, and interpreted in the rabbinic period, and are still being interpreted to this day in all in contemporary responsa. So kosher laws are based upon laws that we'll read in Exodus, but a lot in the book of Leviticus, and are worthy of a whole conversation. The whole another workshop that you may want to do sometime with Rabbi Glasser is the whole Jewish approach to food, which in itself is a worthwhile, a very much worthy adult education class. And you should do it when the building, like next year, so that you can study it and then you can eat it, which is even better. Because we have some bizarre foods, as you know, but that's another story for another time. So this passage in the Talmud talking about washing your hands, okay, and about germs. Now, they did not know germ theory in the 6th century in Babylonia. So what this really refers to, and this goes back to a service that we did, I think, last month. We did the demonology and magic and superstition service on February, I think. Well, this literally goes back to that, because in Jewish demonology, there is a demon called Shivta, whose job it was, who resides in spreading disease and that you can't see. And so you wash the hands according to the interpretations of Yoma. The context was giving food to people who are not supposed to fast on Yom Kippur. And there's levels of people who are not supposed to fast, including minors. So you wash your hands to get rid of the demon who is be spreading disease. And there's another passage in another book of the Talmud in Chulin, which is another book in the Talmud, which also parallels the passage in Yoma. The point being that even in the Talmudic passages, there's this little thing that cleanliness, washing the hands, is taking care of yourself, because you're supposed to take care of yourself in order to reflect, as Hillel said, the fact that you are a representation of God. Okay. Now, fast forward to the 12th century, and you deal with Maimonides. Maimonides, again, next year, a very, very worthwhile debt education class to just walk yourself through the life of Maimonides. It's a very, very, very important. We're going to talk about Maimonides a little bit more when it comes to the mental health, because he at one point in his life dealt with depression, clinical depression. But Maimonides, as it was a physician, as you know, he's the court physician to the Caliph in Cairo in the 1100s, the late 1100s. And he wrote extensively as a doctor and as the foremost Talmudic authority of his day on issues around health. And he tried to manage and juxtapose the Talmudic and Jewish positions on dealing with health. And so he wrote a lot about how a physician who's the healer, a rofeh, the healer, how the physician is supposed to deal with patients when they come in to visit him. I want to give you two references to Maimonides. This is 12th century, ladies and gentlemen. This is not 21st century. This is 12th century. Maimonides addresses the connection, and parenthetically, Judaism is a holistic model, medical model. It understands there's a distinct connection between the mind, the body, and the soul. This is not New Age. This is who we are. We've lost it, and we don't teach it to you enough, but this is really who we are. Maimonides addresses the connection between the mind and the body in many of his writings. One of the clearest expressions of this linkage, this holistic linkage between physical health and psychological health, he wrote a letter to the Sultan in about 1198. And the Sultan was asking his advice about child rearing and his kids. So Maimonides writes, "Let the physician remember," this is 12th century, "that every ill person's heart is constricted and every healthy person's heart is broadened. Therefore, let the physician relieve the patient," listen to this, "of his psychological problems which bring him to despondence. This will strengthen the patient's general health and is the first step in the treatment of any ill person. Certainly, when a patient's illness is primarily of a psychological nature, for example, hypochondriasis or melancholia, depression, attention to the patient's psychological state is even more necessary." Now, one of the Maimonidean scholars wrote the following: Maimonides demanded much from the physician and the patient. He expects the physician to be a reservoir of knowledge concerning ethical, philosophical, and religious approaches to living, as well as an expert in diagnosis, understanding the body, and drugs. This is before managed care, so you don't have to answer that question, okay? First, listen to this. Y'all just think when you go to the doctor, this is how it should be. First, the physician needs to obtain a clear understanding of the patient's subjective world and secure a diagnosis of the patient's psychological distress. Even if the psychological stress is not manifest, it is assumed to exist, and the physician is required to search for it. Only after the psychological workup has been completed can the physician begin to deal with the medical intervention. You got that? So in other words, when you go to the doctor, the first 20 minutes, half hour, he's supposed to ask you, or she's supposed to ask you, tell me, how are things at home? What's going on in your life? How are your children? How are your how's the job? What stress are you under? You know, are you feeling overburdened? Are you feeling put upon? Are you feeling somewhat depressed? And after you have this conversation, then, according to Maimonides, you're saying, now, why are you here? Well, I have this pain. I have this pain in my side. I can hardly breathe when I walk too fast. As well, we just figured out you're under a significant amount of stress. You're not eating right. You're not sleeping well. You're being overburdened. Your oldest child is driving you absolutely up the wall. What are you doing with all this emotion? Well, I work hard. I don't get enough. Does you ever think that all that stuff has to go somewhere? And maybe it's going here, or maybe it's going here, and that pain in the chest, or your headache, or you can't. So maybe instead of writing you a prescription, maybe we really have to talk about the psychological stress that you're under. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this is 12th century, not 21st century New Age medicine. This is 12th century. Now, show of hands, how many of your doctors do that? 1, 2, 3, 4. That's really cool. That's really cool. That's very good. I have a doctor, they do that too. And so that's very, very cool.
Not a half hour's worth.
Well, it's rabbinic hyperbole. We exaggerate about everything. That's the greatest thing. That's the greatest thing. You guys know that by now. Bob.
Is that the Hippocratic Oath? Isn't that the Hippocratic Oath, I think?
That's do no harm.
Do no harm. Okay.
Do no harm. That's the essence of the Hippocratic Oath, which doctors take upon graduating medical school, is basically do no harm. So health is absolutely paramount. Now, there's a whole series of texts within the tradition that lend itself to interpretation. There's a couple of texts in Exodus that talk about refuah, healing. Here's one of the classic texts from the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 22, verses 1 and 2, just in case you want to check me. And, you can write it down, check it out. Now, I want to ask you, very good, Karen. Actually, I have my doctor's cell phone number too. And anytime, anyway, listen, your test is going to be, I want you to interpret this text and how does it relate to health and staying healthy? You ready? This is Deuteronomy 22, verse 1 and 2. First person who gets the answer, just buzz in. If you see a fellow's ox or sheep gone astray, do not ignore it. You must take it back to your fellow. If your fellow does not live near you, or you do not know who he is, you shall bring it home, and it shall remain with you until your fellow claims it, and then you shall cause it to be returned to him. Okay? Clear? Now, put on your rabbi interpretation hat. And in what way can you link this to staying healthy and health? Just buzz in, Don. Unmute.
Well, because he needs he needs those animals for his livelihood. If he doesn't have those animals, it's going to make his work harder.
That's the economic interpretation. No, that because
I'm an
when you're-
accountant. What can I say?
well, it's, the Havdil. So, you know, in those days, yes, we were an agricultural community, and that was the economic, you know, they weren't into manufacturing, they were into agriculture. Linda.
Perhaps it makes the person feel good about themselves that they've done something to help somebody else.
Could be. Focus on the last part of the verse, and thou shalt restore it to him. Sandra. You're muted, Sandra. You're muted. Unmute.
Okay, I'm fine. Okay. I was thinking, like, if I find something of someone's, when I return it to them, it makes me feel good. And of course, it's going to make them feel good because they're getting back what they lost. So it's a win-win.
So you're getting, now you're in the ballpark. You're in left field, but you're in the ballpark. Okay. And now here's another hint. If you're sick, what have you lost? First person, come on, unmute. You know this. If you're sick, what have you lost? If you get sick, what have you lost? Yeah, Felice, unmute. You unmute. I can't hear you. I don't read lips. Except on the
I got it. I did it. You've lost time, energy, and whatever you were going to do.
You're so close. You're in the infield. What if you get sick? What have you lost?
You've lost whatever you were going to produce.
Nope. That's back to the economics. Goldie?
You've lost your connection with God.
Not quite, but that's an ancillary effect of losing your. Anybody else? You lost.
How about your health?
Yes.
Wellness.
Your health. Thank you very much. Oh, I was getting nervous there. Even the dog is getting upset. You lost your health. So the interpretation, one of the interpretations of this verse, which starts off with you lose your ox, is if you lose your health, if you're sick, it's incumbent upon someone, hence the doctor, to restore it to you. So this is, if we were now going to go off on a tangent, which we don't have the time to do, on the role of the doctor and stuff like that in Jewish tradition, which is, there's a lot of stuff written on it. This is why you are, according to Judaism and the Talmud, you are not permitted to live in a town without a physician.
Wow.
You are not. Why? This verse. Because if you get sick, you are on. Now go back to the Leviticus Rabbah passage. If you get sick, you're unable, or the prayer in the morning, you're unable to worship God. You have to be focused. If you can't breathe, and if you're wheezing, and if you're coughing, and if you're hacking away, and if you're tired, you got 101 fever, the last thing you want to do is start, oh, I got to pray now. Just leave me alone. Give me some brandy and a tea, and let me go to sleep, and a couple of pills. Okay. This verse is very, very, it's another instance like the Leviticus Rabbah verse, passage, to give you this insight into how we approach this. So here are I'm going to give you two other absolutely fantastic quotes from the tradition. This is from Maimonides' Mishnah Torah. Now, his Mishnah Torah was one of his two greatest accomplishments. It's his interpretation of the Torah and Jewish tradition. It was a Bible. It was very, very popular in the Middle Ages and the Rabbinic period. It was basically superseded in many ways by the Shulchan Aruch, which comes up a couple of centuries later, but that's another story. So listen to this. one who regulates one's life accordance with the laws of medicine, with the sole motive of maintaining a sound and vigorous physique and begetting children to do his work and labor for his benefit, is not, N-O-T, not following the right path. A person should aim to maintain physical health and vigor in order that his soul may be upright and in a condition to know God. That's why you have to watch your health in Judaism, so you can worship God. It has nothing to do with running a marathon. By the way, liberal religion does not preach this anymore, even though ethically and theologically, this is at the heart of Jewish tradition's approach to health. Whoever throughout his life follows this course will be continually serving God, even, Don, while engaged in business and even during cohabitation, because his purpose in all he does will be to satisfy his needs so as to have a sound body with which to serve God. I bet you didn't know that. Puts a whole new slant on things. Even when he sleeps and seeks repose to calm his mind and rest his body so as not to fall sick and be incapacitated from serving God, his sleep is service to the Almighty. Why is sleep service to God? There's a ton of stuff being written about this now. Jill?
Well, then you're rested and awake, like you said, to better serve God.
Mm-hmm. You're refreshed. Even in the Talmudic times, they knew that sleep deprivation causes illness. So all of this, again, this is very traditional, okay? But I need to let you know, this is the theological foundation for us as a Jewish civilization when it comes to health. Now, let me give you this last thing. This, when I first read this many, many years ago, I went crazy because you realize this is 12th century. Okay, it's not new. This is from an essay called On the Preservation of Youth by Maimonides. So it's 12th century. So listen to this. One does not consider exercise, though it is the main principle in keeping one's health and in the repulsion of most illnesses. And there is no such thing as excessive body movements and exercise. Exercise removes the harm caused by most bad habits, which most people have. And no movement, listen to this, is as beneficial, according to the physicians, as body movements and exercise. Exercise refers both to strong and weak movements, providing it is movement that is vigorous and affects breathing, increasing it. It's aerobics. Violent exercise causes fatigue, and not everyone can stand it or needs it. It is good for the preservation of health to shorten the exercises. In other words, Maimonides, a practicing physician, basically was saying, to put it in 21st century terms, get the hell off the couch. Go outside, take a walk, join a gym, do some aerobics, get that heart rate up. Get that heart rate up. And you have to tailor the exercise to you. Okay, you may not be able, your body may not be able to get your heartbeat up to 140 beats per minute and do the treadmill at a 45, 50 degree angle. That's okay. That's okay. You have to tailor the exercise to the person where they are, but do something. Get out, take a walk, get that heart pumping. This is 12th century. Okay. You can go to every article in the newspapers and stuff like that. And what are they going to tell you? Especially just get out next. What is everybody saying now to avoid the pandemic 15? Get out, get off the couch, take a walk around the block, do this, do that. none of them read their Maimonides, but I wanted to tell you this. It's fascinating because we never teach this to you. We never teach this to you. For some reason, kids go through religious school who really need to know about physical exercise, and we never give this. Adults, this is why I wanted to do this workshop, because this is something that's really important. One of the things we created when I ran the Department of Blessed Memory was a congregational health audit. It's about a 5-page audit that we did for congregations. We distributed thousands of these at regional biennials and national biennials. And it is about a 4 or 5 page just lists with text of things that a congregation can do. And then at the last page, a person to stay healthy and to develop a health program within a congregation, of which many congregations were doing prior to the pandemic. Health fairs in cooperation with hospitals and family services. And in fact, right now, we even have 1 or 2 congregations who are actually opening their buildings for vaccinations. They've gone into business with the local stuff, whatever it is, and using their buildings for COVID vaccinations. If you are interested for next year, you can download the health audit. We put it on my website, and you go to jewishsacredaging.com. You click on the top, which says resources. And after you click on resources, you click on study guides. And under study guides is going to be the health audit. Print it out, slap Ahavat Chesed's logo on it, and you have an instant adult education and youth education program. And give it out, make it available the high holidays. It's cost to the congregation $0, and you can develop a whole program based upon what we're talking about tonight around this, and it's all done for you. And there's a ton of text, a ton of other text. Okay. Jill, Ellen, this goes to, we're contracted till 8 or 8:30, I forget.
8, but we can go longer if you like.
Okay, I just want to, first of all, are there any questions so far about the physical health aspect? Any questions? Once, twice, 3 times?
Just a statement. I don't know anything about medicine in the 12th century, but do you know if he was very unusual for his time?
No. One of the interesting things about medieval Jewry and scholarship, that physicians was one of the professions that was open. So there are a lot of physician scholars, Maimonides being the most famous, and he has a whole philosophical tradition that comes out of Aristotle and the Greco-Roman period. So his theology and philosophy is very Greek and Aristotelian, and his God is very removed from us. It's not a very personal God, and he also followed this Greek physician Galen, Galen, where, so I mean, the medical education then is certainly not what it is now by any stretch of the imagination. But there's a lot of good stuff written about Maimonides, and I would really urge you next year to, if you're interested in this, I mean, to really do an adult education. I'm sure Rabbi Glasser or somebody can. There's plenty of people around who do this, but it's really fascinating because we really don't study them that much, and we should. Okay. Any other questions, comments? Mental health. The reason why I want to include this in this presentation tonight is because the mental health concerns, especially as a result of the pandemic, are overwhelming. I don't go through a day without this being raised in a conversation, either in a class that I'm teaching, because I'm doing a lot of teaching, or the conversation with a colleague, or in consultation with other just was talking to a congregation this afternoon about developing some men's programs, specifically men's issues programs, which are desperately needed, and because most congregations don't touch this at all. They have very powerful sisterhoods, but for some reason, there's a real reluctance for men to really talk about substantive things that are on our minds. That's another program issue. So the mental health stuff is very, very powerful. We're going to be dealing with this for years, what I call the post-pandemic stress syndrome. We're going to be dealing with this for years. No congregation is prepared for it, none. And the mental health system isn't prepared for it. And they know it's coming, but there just aren't enough people. And recently, from what I understand, a significant amount of money that was geared from the federal government to mental health places, associations, outreach services has been cut. So quietly, nobody really made a big deal about it, which is a shame, but they're going to be really needed. So the Jewish Family Service that deals with Duval and St. Johns County, if they're how active they are in the community, will be heavily pressed. And this is another thing I urge you to think about with working on for next year. But what I want to do with you in the time we have is I gave you this sort of like brief overview theologically of our position on health and why it's important. What about mental health? Now, believe it or not, the mental health concerns come in our tradition, are raised in the Tanakh, in the Bible. And some of the texts that form the basis of the conversation are in the Bible. Anybody remember probably the most famous story in the Bible? It comes from the book of Samuel, 1 Samuel. Anybody, if you've ever studied this, you may not have studied it. 1 Samuel, King Saul, who had his own issues, and many people think he had some significant mental health issues. Because he was put in power as a puppet by the high priest Samuel and Eli, because the people wanted a king. So in the book of Samuel, it's a great book to study. Basically, they said, okay, well, you guys want a king, even though the king's going to corrupt you, we're going to get you what you want. You be careful what you wish for. So we're going to go pick a guy who's a real schlub. He's doomed to failure. Okay. But we're going to make him king and you'll see what happens. And they picked Saul, who was not ready to be king, failed, lost the wars with the Philistines, and had a lot of problem with this young lieutenant named David, who, according to 1 Samuel, was rising in the ranks and was winning the wars against the Philistines. And at one point in 1 Samuel chapter 15 and 16, Saul is going into a major episode. And what does he do? He is overcome by, in Hebrew, the phrase ruach ra'ah. Ruach ra'ah, R-U-A-C-H, ruach ra'ah. That means a ruach is a spirit and ra'ah is evil. He is overcome. This is in the text. He is overcome by a ruach ra'ah. They don't know what to do. They bring in this kid, David, who plays some musical instrument. Some people say it's a harp. I didn't make the movie. I don't know what it was. It was some instrument. And he soothes the outburst of King Saul, basically saying this is in the Jewish tradition, the first instance of music therapy, of using music to really calm someone who's agitated. We do the same thing today. There are assisted living and memory care units who are dealing with people with Alzheimer's, because I've interviewed some of them on the podcast, who will, when a person checks into the facility, ask the family, what kind of music did mom really love? and they'll say big band 1940s music, and they will put a tape and give the patient an ear like a Walkman. And they've now proven, there's been studies on this, that music triggers memory and also reduces agitation. Music is the last part of the brain to leave us. And that's why, for those of you who volunteered perhaps at the facility in Jacksonville, or have had to walk this walk with family members, you can put on a piece of music and you'll get a reaction. Or a lot of times chaplains will use this, and they'll chant a melody, a Jewish melody, a blessing, some Yiddish song, and it will trigger some sort, because it's lodged in the memory. It's fascinating. It's fascinating. Yeah, I know, Karen, that's really sad that Tony Bennett has been diagnosed. It's very, because he's like 92, 93 years old. Very sad. So there's other passages in the Tanakh that also reference various types of concerns or maladies, and words that you use and that we have. For example, in 1 Samuel 21, the word nishuga, which comes into Yiddish as mishugana, he's a little off, okay? Now, so that's in the Bible. Fast forward to a conversation in the Talmud. In Masechet Chagiga, which is another one of the 66 books in the Talmud, 3b, in case you want to check me out, Chagiga. There's a discussion in the Talmud of, can someone be an aid, a witness in a bet din, a Jewish legal court, if they're dealing with mental health issues? And in the Talmud, there is an actual word called shoteh, S-H-O-T-E-H, shoteh. And so the rabbis in the Talmud, in the context of this conversation, say in Talmudic Aramaic, Ezuhu shoteh. Who is a shoteh? How do we know if someone is dealing with mental health issues? Okay. So in Chagiga, they have a 3-part definition. That's by observation. This is before EEGs. This is before medicine and medication. You looked, and if something didn't look right, you made a diagnosis. It's a 3-part diagnosis. 1, a shoteh is defined by somebody who goes out alone at night where that's not usual. 2, who sleeps in a cemetery. 3, who tears one's clothing. Okay? 3-part observation. Then, because it's the Talmud, the rabbis then have a conversation. They have to ask, well, are all 3 things necessary? Does somebody have to do all 3 things, or is it just one thing? And they have this conversation, just like, because you could rationalize something. Okay, well, somebody does it. Well, they're a little strange. They like this. They like to take walks in the middle of the night and just clear their head and meditate. It's not what we do, but it makes sense for them. So the Talmud asks if all 3 separate actions are necessary to determine, or if one action alone is indicative of incompetence. So a guy named Rav Huna says, no, all 3 have to be present. Then Rabbi Yochanan, this is how the Talmud works, back and forth. Rabbi Yochanan says, no, just one. But the Talmud says we know that anyone can be explained in a normal fashion. You can rationalize. There could be a rational explanation why people do things. Okay? So the definition must be altered to one who performs such actions in a way that would indicate severe abnormality. In other words, this is so totally out of character with somebody, then you could be considered a shoteh. And then the Talmud goes on to say, why do we need all three? If all may have a plausible explanation, then the three may not or need not define Oshoteh. Then Rabbi Huna says, look, if there's only one act, we attempt to rationalize it. Okay, we do the same thing today. We do the same thing today. If you see somebody all of a sudden acting strangely or out of the ordinary, say, well, he's had a bad day, he just broke up, he just lost his job, she's gone through a divorce, she just lost a loved one. You know, people deal with all this stuff in all different ways. Other than that, she's fine. Yeah, that's one of the Talmudic arguments. But if all three actions are performed by the same person, then we don't try to rationalize it, and the person is deemed a shoteh. So again, this is by observation. This is Talmudic, by observation. We can try and rationalize one thing, but if a person acts so out of the ordinary that they've never done anything like that before, and if they do more than one of these things, then they fall into the level of a shoteh, and in the Bet Din, they cannot serve as a witness in court. Now, in the state of Florida, can somebody who's deemed mentally incompetent be a witness in the court in the state of Florida? I mean, that's probably not. I mean, it's on Law and Order all the time. If it's on Law and Order, it has to be right.
Ernie's a judge, so let him answer.
Oh, wait a minute.
He can be a witness. He could dispute it.
We can't hear you.
He can be a witness, but he may be discredited.
I discredited. Right. Thank you, Your Honor. Okay, Bob, you had your hand up.
Is he would that consider institutionalized in that?
Say again?
Would he be for those three things, would it be institutionalized?
Not, well, they didn't have the same type of institutionalization in the Middle Ages that we have now.
Okay.
Would they be guarded? Probably. Would they be, if there was a place in some of a city? Probably. But a lot of the shtetls, no. It wasn't organized that way. Okay. But the point being, I wanted to show you that the tradition is looking at this. And again, the context is the court of law, you know. Maimonides, who was a practicing physician, expanded this definition to include anyone who has lost his rational thought and is always confused in one particular area, even when he or she may seem rational in another area. So Maimonides is then expanding this to say if somebody really is acting out in a total irrational fashion, there's probably an indication that we're dealing with some sort of mental illness. And Maimonides understood this. He suffered from depression. He suffered from what we think was clinical depression because his closest confidant and his brother was killed in a seafaring accident. And evidently, according to the scholarship, when you do your adult education on Maimonides, he went into a depression because he lost in this accident his brother. So Maimonides' experience as a practical and practicing physician, he knew that there were lots of psychological conditions and biological states that could influence the way the mind works. Again, it's a holistic approach. And he says that each case has to be judged on a case-by-case basis. This is Jewish bioethics throughout our tradition. You deal with the context, like we talked about at the end of life stuff in February. You deal with the case before you. The Talmudic definition of shoteh did not equal clinical experience. Okay, it was observational. So here you have a Talmudic approach definition. And now you go and you read through all the mental health texts. Then over there, over my left shoulder, you can't see it on that shelf all the way in the back. There's a 3-volume encyclopedia of Judaism and medicine. And in that, there's a huge article, page after page after page, of just Jewish texts and opinions around mental health. Okay, I'm giving you this quick summary of this. One of the things that is absolutely fascinating is the fact that we as a tradition understood this. So, for example, we have Talmudic words, phrases that were used to describe certain issues. Okay. First person to get the answer to this, you can skip Friday night services, no punishment this week, right? Here's the phrase. As soon as you get this, just unmute. Let me know what you think. What does this Talmudic phrase mean in our world? Mara shechora. Mara shechora. Mara is like a bitterness, bitter feeling. Shachor is Hebrew for dark. So Mara shechora is literally the Hebrew for a dark feeling. We would call that what?
Depression.
Depression. Exactly right. How many people have you ever met who are depressed, either just transitionally or clinically? And they'll say, it's as if a dark cloud that's exactly what the Hebrew says. Exactly what the Hebrew says. Mara shachora. Here's another one. Tiruf, like tirif, hada'at. Tirif, to tear. Da'at. What's in here? What would that be in our
Brain.
What?
Your brain.
Yeah, but what? Tearing.
Your mind.
Tearing away of what's here. What would that be in our contemporary reality or definition?
Schizophrenia.
It would be could be schizophrenia. What else?
Anxiety.
And could be anxiety. What else could it be?
Just losing your mind.
What?
Losing your mind.
Okay, and what's one of the fastest growing diseases amongst older adults right now?
Alzheimer's.
Alzheimer's and dementia. What those of us who've walked the walk with this, with a family member, it's as if what's happening before your eyes.
Mind goes away.
It's as if the da'at up here is being
Torn away.
Torn away. Look at the literalness. It's fascinating to me. The literalness. This is medieval. This is Talmudic and medieval and rabbinic. Okay. I gotta hurry up. So another phrase which is very, very relevant to this conversation. Sakanat nefesh. Sakanat is a danger. And nefesh is what? Anybody? We're all nefesh.
Body.
We're all human beings. Nefesh is our soul, is our humanity. A danger to our self, a self. What is that? How does that play into right now? What happens?
Suicidal.
Well, it could be suicide. Sandra, what else?
Well, that's what I said, suicide.
Okay. Well, you were very good because you were saying it and the words came out of Bob's mouth. So excellent. You can take that on the road and just watch where you put your hand. So, it's who knows. The danger for those of us who've dealt with dementia and Alzheimer's, the danger to a person, there's levels of values. You get a call from the assisted living facility that you better get over there right away because mom, who is making soup left the gas on and the sprinkler system went off. I'm not making any of this up, by the way. Okay. Do they become a danger to themselves and by extension to somebody else? Driving, I know somebody very, very close to me. She was my mother, who towards the end of her life was still driving and was dealing with something called TIAs, which is a long Latin phrase, but they were like mini strokes. And when I said, perhaps, Mom, you shouldn't be driving. You know, what do I know? I'm a kid. I'm 12 years old. I know where I'm going. I only go from my apartment in Brendan Woods to the supermarket, to Midge's house, or to Temple Emmanuel. I said, well, suppose what happens if you have one of those TIAs and you're on the highway? I know how to handle it. That was code language for my mother saying, will you shut the hell up? You're only 12 years old. Go to your room. Didn't matter. I was like 65. It didn't matter at all. So when you become a danger to yourself and by extension, other people, you're permitted to intervene because of a higher value called pikuach nefesh, saving of a life. Because you're like we've talked about before, you're not allowed to put yourself or anybody else's life in danger. So if you're dealing with this sakanat nefesh, a threat to your own nefesh, and by extension, somebody else, then you have the obligation to step in. And there are families in the congregation right now who are dealing with this dilemma. And you probably know somebody who has or is in the process. So again, these are all terms from our tradition that speak to situations that many of us are living today. So I wanted to make sure that you, I don't have that book in front of me. I wanted to make sure that you have this understanding that even in the mental health issue, we have this corpus of tradition that speaks even if it's Talmudic or medieval, that can be interpreted and adapted. And this is very, very, very relevant for people who are dealing with mental health issues now, and when to seek care. And when, if you remember what we did in January, the session we did on caregiving, and I quoted a passage also from Maimonides, who said that when an adult parent gets ill, you'll do everything in your possible to get them better. But if it comes to a point where their illness or their situation it cannot be handled or is severely impacting their health, and you can't continue to take care of them in order to give them a sense of dignity and care, you're permitted to give their care over to a third party, which is liberating for families who have to deal with this very, very painful decision of, I promised my mother, I promised my father that I would never put them into one of those places. But when context comes that it is impossible to take care of somebody and ensure that they are taken care of in dignity and in sanctity, the Jewish tradition says, when you reach that point, then the higher value is that it's okay. You don't have to, but if you need to, understand that you're operating within a framework of Jewish tradition. This is very liberating to families. I will tell you, having dealt with this for years, and every rabbi deals with this because they get this question all the time. Yeah, Bob.
Does hospice comes in, right?
Yes, hospice is recognized in every single denomination. And in this book that we published many years ago when I ran the department, called Questions and Answers About Jewish Tradition and the Issues of Assisted Death, this is 20 years old already. We published our reform movement's position. We helped write this. Our department helped write this on comfort care and hospice care at the end of life. every denomination, a modern denomination in American Judaism, favors hospice care and palliative care. Everyone. And it goes back to what we talked about last month on that fundamental ethic, the dignity and sanctity of human life and the preservation of human life in dignity and in sanctity, even as life ends. That has to be preserved in dignity and in sanctity. And so hospice care is a modern mitzvah. Okay, question, Goldie.
At the beginning, I heard you say that the definitions you were giving us of physical health and mental health were came out of our tradition.
Right.
Does liberal Judaism define them differently?
No.
Has the definition evolved over time?
Yes and no. It's a good rabbinic answer. I mean, the theology has evolved since most liberal congregations refuse to talk about theology, which is our fault. Our fault. And there's a real hunger to talk about it. Every time when I teach, like even in Jacksonville, Torah study or something like that, we start dealing with theological issues. There's a real hunger for it. But the basics of all this are cross-denominational. Now, you may say, well, I don't necessarily agree that the reason why I'm healthy or want to maintain my health is it's so that I can pray to God. Because
that's the one I have most trouble with.
Yeah.
Right.
But or some of you in the class may say, well, I don't particularly believe that my body is a gift from God. That's not my theology. Okay. I mean, that's perfectly okay. It doesn't change the basic question. So when I say to you, Goldie, why do you maintain your position of health? By the way, Mazel Tov on the tree, and speaking of health and the garden, and you may not say, I want to stay healthy so that I can live longer, be with my friends and my family, and not be a burden on people and not be sick, because if I get sick, I am going to be a burden and I don't want to go into a facility, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's a very modern approach, very non-religious, secular approach. My job is to teach you the Jewish approach.
Okay.
And the Jewish approach is you have a fundamental relationship with the Creator. Now, whether you believe in a supernatural creator or not, that's up to you. For those of us who reject supernaturalism and view the concept of God much more of a spirit, a life force, I have absolutely no problem rationalizing or believing that I work out 5 to 6 days a week. Not that I'm going to run a marathon, because there's no chance in hell that that's going to happen. But I know my body is a gift. And I know it's the only one I got. I ain't getting another one. And I'm at an age where I'm very, very much aware that, parts may start changing. And so it's very spiritual, and I use that word advisedly, to teach this idea of taking care of your body, taking care of your health is a spiritual act. And it does go to a higher power, that power of the life force in the universe. I believe. You're free to disagree. This is who I am. So, but if somebody here turns around and says, no, I understand that my body is a gift from God, and that's part of my relationship from Genesis chapter 1. That's fine. That's fine. The bottom line is, you need to understand that this linkage of health and wellness, physical and mental, is deeply rooted in our tradition. And I think this is a fantastic gift of our tradition that most Jews are never aware of, to their detriment, by the way. I think this is liberating in a variety of different ways, especially those paragraphs on exercise. Anyway, other questions, comments? Once, twice? Okay, next session. Oh, Jill, yeah, I was just about to.
Yes, I just wanted to say, thank you. And Darlene sends her regrets. She's the Adult Education Committee member who usually welcomes everybody, but she was under the weather today. So I'll let you wrap up, but I just want to say thank you and make sure to mark your calendars for the last in this most fascinating series, which is April 14th at 7 p.m.
On April 14th, the tease, and here's some scenes from our next episode. If you remember those shows in the 70s where they would always do that. We're going to handle a session that's becoming more and more requested in my work called New Rituals for New Life Stages. I want to walk you through this explosion of new and creative and sometimes controversial rituals that are being and have been produced in the last several years. I'm going to teach you and show you rituals for signing an advance directive, which is a religious act. Most of us who have signed our advance directives never bothered to say a blessing, but we should have, because you sign that document. It is a tangible, literal acknowledgement that we're going to die. It's a very spiritual moment. So we have a blessing for that. I want to show you some of the blessing called the Simchat Chochmah. Does anybody know what a Simchat Chochmah is? You will use, and you should do this next year. One of the fascinating things about this is that I can't understand why every congregation doesn't do this. It doesn't cost them anything. You'll get to that. We're going to show you the blessing that had been said. All this stuff we've published, and there's a whole study guide on the website. I'll show you all this next month. Prayers that have been written on the removal of a wedding ring after the year of mourning. Not for everybody, but it's been used. We're going to show you the blessings for older adult cohabitation. I know this does not happen in Jacksonville, but where I live in Jersey, where there are no rules, every once in a while, somebody comes to the rabbi and says, you know, we met, I'm a widow, I met this widow, and will you come and we're going to live together. Will you say a blessing? It's not a marriage. We're just going to we're going to move in together. You know, I'm 79, she's 75. What the heck? And then I want to close with the thing that's gotten in this the most trouble, but I guarantee you it's in your congregation. Guaranteed. And that is the ritual that we're working on and the conversation about redefining adultery in light of Alzheimer's and dementia.
Wow.
That's next month. So we're going to close with that type of stuff. In the meantime, stay safe. Yeah.
I'm just going to ask, sorry to interrupt. Didn't you do something on one of your shows about rituals around the third stage, one of them being retirement?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I mean, I interviewed a couple of people who's written some books on that. Danny Roberts and Michael Friedman. Danny Roberts did another podcast for me sometime last year on another type of ritual dealing with retirement and transition. There's a lot of stuff that's being written around that because so many baby boomers are transitioning from full-time work. They're not retiring. They're just transitioning into a different type of work. And there's rituals being written about that. There's some fascinating stuff being because people need ritual. They want rituals. Religious rituals are very important. Every single one of us have rituals. We have rituals, secular rituals, and we may not call them rituals, but there are rituals. And when we deviate from those rituals, we get a little messed up.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna try to condense all this into about an hour, which is manifestly, I will talk fast. But some of these blessings, Jill, and some of these issues, and they're all very real. Everything I'm going to teach you next month is being used or has been used. It's not theoretical. Even the adultery thing. So that's a tease for next month. So I will see you, let's see, in a couple of next week for Shabbat and services and Torah study and Passover. Good luck for those of you going to the Ladies Seder tomorrow night. It's really, Carrie showed me what you're doing. It's really pretty. And we'll do the congregational Seder on that Sunday night and services for Shabbat and the next morning for the first day of the festival. So, and then the week afterwards is Yisker. So we'll see a lot of you. And then I hope to, from the way things are looking, my plan is to, now that I'm totally vaccinated and free, my 2 weeks post second shot is up. I'm going to start coming down there in April. So hopefully I'll be able to see some of you in person. And you can tell me your deli stories. I'll tell you my deli stories. But those delis are gone forever, the old ones. Yeah. I remember my dad, we used to go when he lived before my parents were divorced. And where I grew up in Philadelphia, there was the R&W Delicatessen where they had the pickle barrels, but my dad loved halva, something that's horrible. On the top of the counter, okay, there was these big bricks of halva.
Yes.
And my father would get these big bricks of halva. By the way, it was 100% cholesterol. I mean, there's nothing healthy about halva. But the other thing I remember as a kid, every time you walked in and said, I like a pound of corned beef lean, it was always like, that's a little over. And I thought that was part of the ritual as a kid, a little over. Then I realized, by the way, that's in violation of Leviticus 19. If you read Leviticus 19, it says equal weights for equal measures. So if you go to Publix and you go to the deli, which itself is insulting, and the guy says it's a little over, you say you're in violation of Leviticus 19. In Jacksonville, that could probably get you shot.
Yeah.
Rob, remember cooking with schmaltz?
Schmaltz. Let me tell you something about schmaltz. A lost art form. Now, my mother was the greatest cook who ever existed in the face of the human race. I was just talking to my son about this. We were talking about my mother's chopped liver with an old bowl, and she would chop the liver and she would cook and she would make it with the schmaltz. I remember my grandfather of blessed memory. When I was a kid, he and my grandmother owned Bricker's Dress Shop on Ventnor Avenue in Ventnor, when Atlantic City was Atlantic City. And I remember visiting him one morning. I was like 8 years old, and walking into the kitchen, and my grandfather, who had emigrated from Lithuania, was sitting there reading the Atlantic City Press. He had a glass, had the sugar cube in his mouth. That's how he was drinking his tea. And he had a big slice of fresh pumpernickel, about that fit, fresh. And on top of the pumpernickel was a thick layer of schmaltz. You all know what schmaltz is, right? And he died of a heart attack. Okay. But and to this day, I can remember my mother making homemade kreplach, another lost art form. And she would fry the kreplach in schmaltz, right, Goldie? And the smell, you could walk in from school and you'd salivate. And it was so good. It was absolutely nothing healthy. Talking about health, nothing healthy about schmaltz. But you ever have a matzah ball where the middle of the matzah, because I'm a clunker, I'm not a floater. Floating matzah balls they're not for Jewish people. You have to have a matzah ball that has substance. It has to sink, right? And it goes right here and it stays with you for about 4 or 5 days. That's a matzah ball. But the classic matzah ball has the center with schmaltz. That's what holds it together. It gives you that good, that feeling that you get when you get up from the Seder table and your heart's on fire. You think you're having a heart attack. That's supposed to happen. If you don't feel that, it's not really good. You're supposed to, it's like that Buddy Hackett routine when he went to the army, and he used to do this on the Tonight Show. And he went to the army and he got done, and his mother said, "Are you okay?" He says, "Yeah, the food here is I don't have any feeling. I eat and then nothing happening because he didn't have any schmaltz." Have a wonderful week. Stay safe. Stay
Thank
healthy.
you.
Rabbi, enjoyed it.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Enjoyed
Thank
it.
you, everybody.
He's great. Joe, he's really excellent.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Entertaining.
Night.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Sleep well, everybody. Take care. Thanks, Bob.
Very welcome,
Take
sir.
care.
Very